Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Scott's Soldiers. Today I want to show you some more of my Spirit of the Empire figures. I started collecting these over 10 years ago from two purveyors of toy soldiers in Ottawa and Montreal, the Ottawa Toy Soldier Market and D'Artagnan. Sadly, both have closed their doors. These figures represent some of the forces of New France in what was then Acadia and Quebec in the mid-1700s. For those unfamiliar, Acadia was centered in what is now northern Maine and the provinces of present-day Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island. Following a series of military victories against the forces of New France circa 1755, the British began a policy of deporting by force most of the Acadian population to the then French territory of Louisiana and the 13 colonies. Having said that, Acadian culture still survives in Canada's maritime provinces. These Acadian and Franche de la Marine figures measure a bit more than 54, maybe 56 millimeters, are gloss painted, and are part of the second half of Spirit's history when, according to an article in Toy Soldier Model Figures magazine by Stuart Hesney, D'Artagnan bought out the original artists and moved the management of this line to Montreal in 2002. I've built this presentation around John Jenkins' designs Port Saint-Louis, the western gate to the Fortress of Quebec. This appeared previously in episode 28, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. Included is another John Jenkins piece. This is number BCHGUN-02 English 24-pounder cannon. Somehow, I don't think the defenders of New France would turn their noses up at a little booty at the expense of the King of England. It's a decent little piece, and I'm sure most would not know it was English anyway. I've added this lonely figure, looks like a typical administrator of the day, at a low bench, both of which I bought at the Guards Toy Soldier Centre in London about 10 years ago. I don't know who the maker is, there's no stamps or anything on the bases. Spirit of the Empire included a little information card with each of its figures. I'm just going to read what it wrote about the Franche de la Marine. In 1682, the colony of New France found itself on the brink of war with the Iroquois, and short of military resources, under the authority of the Ministry of the Navy, 3 detachments were hastily put together and shipped to Quebec City from France in 1683. While regular army units had considerable difficulty with the rugged Canadian terrain, Les Compagnies Franche de la Marine quickly attained the fighting skills required to survive and won the respect of both the British and the natives. Until 1755, these independent Navy troops, whose number had grown to some 40 companies, were the only regular infantry units in Canada. Les Compagnies Franche de la Marine were involved in almost every battle from 1683 to 1755 and were major participants in the French and Indian War and the 7 Years' War. By this time, nearly all officers of Les Compagnies Franche de la Marine were native Canadians, and thus can be considered the forerunner of the Canadian Permanent Force. Spirit did some British figures from the Fraser Highlanders Regiment, which were intended to complement the Acadian de la Marine figures. I don't have many Franche de la Marine and would like to get more. If you saw episode 28, Port Saint-Louis, you will have seen figures of New France as made by Britons and tradition of London. With respect to the Acadian partisans, Spirit wrote this. In 1755, some 6,000 to 8,000 French Acadians were deported from present-day Nova Scotia to the American colonies by English troops, which is described in Longfellow's poem, Evangeline. Hundreds of Acadians managed to escape the expulsion, and as they waited for France to regain control of the area, the Acadian partisans hid in the forests, living in horrible conditions and with little or nothing to eat. Among the Acadian partisans were fierce and often outnumbered militiamen who protected many families from English soldiers who had been sent out to capture those who resisted deportation. Small in number but large in determination, the partisans took part in many battles, including those at Fort Louisbourg in 1758 and the Plains of Abraham in 1759, for which a commemorative plaque honors their heroic efforts in the face of Wolfe's army. The Acadians, I believe, are well painted and certainly have an authentic, casual air about them, what I would expect from a militia force versus a regiment of the line. I particularly like how they have different facials, and the uniforms for this grouping match up to this painting I found online. Just my opinion, but I think it was too bad that D'Artagnan wasn't able to advance its spirit product lines to other French regiments that served in New France, or something like the Voltigeur that fought in the War of 1812. The company did do more contemporary Canadian military figures, some of which will appear in future episodes, but in the interim, I'm on an ongoing hunt to find spirit figures to add to my collection. As I mentioned in episode 29, Toy Soldier Boxes, Spirit sold these figures in its wooden crates / cartridge boxes with wood shavings. And I have to keep saying that of all the soldier boxes I have, these are the most distinct. So that's it for this facet of my collection. If you liked what you saw, please hit the like or subscribe buttons. Until next time, keep collecting.